weekly chamber debates every Wednesday night at 7:30, or like 38 minutes past 7, you know, technical difficulties, hence why we're a bit late. But yeah, welcome for this evening. This evening with his debates, we actually have basically two parts. We have private business and then public business. In private business, that it's kind of like a traditional thing that we do. We're an old society. It's basically the inner workings of the society. So we go through fines, there are actually no fines. We go through reports, there are actually no reports. And it's just kind of a silly thing that we do because we're old and whatever. And then we go on to public business, which is actually the debate, and that's why you came. So without further ado, I'd like to call upon Maria Cullen to take the chair for private business.
Thank you very much. I call this house to order, and I call upon the record secretary to read the minutes of the last private business meeting.
The last private meeting took place on the 07/10/2020 with Pierce Sinnott in the chair. There were no fines, no reports to be read, no motions on notice, one motion not on notice. Privileged motion number 3, motion of congratulations to the Nth Department for running an excellent Freshers Week. The motion was passed.
Woo. Woo.
Is Maria frozen?
Maria, are you still with us?
Maria seems to be frozen.
It's just suspense. It's just being suspenseful.
I love Zoom.
This is great.
Gone.
Oh, it's Maria disappeared. Were there any objections to Maria signing those minutes?
No.
We'll get her to sign. This usually doesn't happen, that the chair suddenly disappears from the meeting. Okay. Well, assuming that she'll come back, and assuming that she would have ceded the floor to the auditor, I'm going to move forward with private business. So firstly, Madam Treasurer, are there any fines?
There are no fines.
Excellent. There are never any fines. Do not worry, to anyone who's new to the HIST.
I'm sorry.
We don't have any fines. No worries. We moved slightly on, but if you want to go back to where it should have been.
Is there has the minutes been read?
Yeah.
We done with minutes. Okay. Is there any objection to my signing these minutes as a true and accurate reflection of the last private business meeting? No. Well, then I shall duly sign.
Yes.
We love to see it, and we love to see them. Okay. I have it written on my phone. Okay. Well, then I shall duly sign, and then I cede the floor back to the auditor.
Hi, I'm just going to go again. Hey, Madam Treasurer, are there any fines?
There are still no fines.
That's shocking. Now, Madam Librarian, could you open question time?
Time for questions is now open.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for literally anyone who's watching to ask a question about the society. You know, technically it's meant to be like, oh, something like fancy, like, oh, how's the financial health of the society? But you could literally ask anything you want. You could ask how, you know, Maggie's day's going, or whether, you know, I don't know, what's the weather like in wherever people are. You can ask, oh, bees?
Bees. I think I can answer that.
Okay.
Bees.
Oh, just that. Okay.
Wait. If I may elaborate. In particular, this bee.
Yeah. That's actually a really good question to ask. I'm delighted that Maria could answer it so thoroughly. With that, if there's no other questions that people want to ask in the chat,
Alpha wants to know how we're holding up.
Wait, what? How we're holding up?
Not great. You know, week 3. I've not watched any of my lectures at all. It's fine. Thanks, Alva.
Okay, great. With that, Madam Librarian.
The time for questions is now closed.
Great. Okay. Mr. Pro Record Secretary, are there any reports to be read?
Hello. Am I meant to answer something specific here, or am I now meant to speak?
Just say no.
No, there are no reports to be read, Mrs.
Great.
Auditor.
Woo!
Are there any motions on notice?
There are not.
Are there any motions not on notice?
There are not? No. Yeah. No.
Great. Okay, and with all of that, now I actually have to go back to Madam Treasurer. Are there any fines?
Guessed it, Breed. There are no fines.
Oh my god. One day I hope there will be some fine. Cool. Okay, and with that, I'll cede the floor back to the chair.
The only fine here is you. And I'm pointing at the camera because it's all of y'all. Okay, with this bottle of Rivero, I call this house adjourned. Woo!
Oh,
Alrighty.
That was a very entertaining private business. Without further ado, I'd now like to begin public business by calling upon the chair for this evening, Dr. Maria
McAuliffe.
McAuliffe.
Don't say McAuliffe. So that brings back bad memories.
Okay, I apologize. I'd like to call you to the chair.
McAuliffe. I call this house to order and call on the record secretary to read the minutes of the last public business meeting.
Hello, everyone. I am not funny. And that is something that I have learned is a really good thing to say at the beginning of something that you're supposed to be funny in, because it brings people's expectations down lots and lots and lots. But here, it is not only like a tactic, it is simply true. Please don't think that you're going to laugh at anything that I'm about to say right now. Sophie Furlong-Teig, who many of you freshers or people who are new to the HIST or anything like that, you might not know, began all of her record secretary speeches with these iconic words. And it really did resonate with me because I really amn't funny. But what the record secretary is supposed to do, and it normally wouldn't be me because Sean is normally the record secretary. I'm Matthew, I'm his pro, I'm one of his minions that he very kindly orders around. He can't be here today because he's busy trying to make his hair as nice as mine, which he won't be able to do, but you know, he can try. Anyway, I'm Matthew. My main personality trait these days is telling everyone that I have not been watching my online lectures. That's all that I'm telling people about myself. I'm like, hi, look, I haven't gotten to any lectures, and they really resonate with that, which is a fun time. Something else that I want to tell you guys is that an hour ago, I was just out swimming with my friends. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I haven't posted on social media yet, but you bet I will. You bet, just keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be there. Anyway, the job of the record secretary is to say really fun and interesting things at the beginning of a debate every Wednesday. And obviously I am at the record secretary because I'm saying neither funny nor interesting things. In fact, what I am doing is this thing that I've actually coined. I think you guys should use it. It's called comediocrity. It is a mixture of mediocrity and being a comedian. What is it? It is it's like, you know, you try comedy, but you fail at it. And you try mediocrity, but you fail at that too. And you reach this amazing middle ground of comediocrity. And you may ask yourself, how is it used? What does it look like? Well, look no further than what's happening on your screen right now. A lovely example of comediocrity that I'll bring to you right now to close my minutes for the speech is the following. Earlier on in the week, I experienced lots and lots of trauma. And this trauma came from the fact that I lost my comfort blanket that I had been holding ever since I was a 6-year-old. I would snuggle up to my face anytime that I was scared or anxious or nervous about something. And I lost it earlier on in the week, and it caused me lots of pain and suffering. And I don't want to cause you guys any pain and suffering. So with that, I'm going to give you this new comfort blanket, and I'm going to stop my minutes.
Okay. And are there any objections at all to my signing these minutes as a true and accurate account of the last public business meeting? Anyone? No? Okay, then I shall duly sign. I would now like to call on the auditor to introduce the invited guests to the House.
I think Breed has frozen.
Breed?
Yeah, Zoom is just not having any of our plans this evening.
God, I love Zoom.
Ideal.
Why is Zoom so misogynistic?
Zoom clearly doesn't want to free the nipple. Since if Breed is frozen, I can. Breed has disappeared. I can invite the invited guest to the House, who is our lovely chair for this evening, Dr. Mary McAuliffe. Dr. Mary McAuliffe is an assistant professor in gender studies at UCD. She holds a PhD from Trinity College Dublin. She specialises in Irish women's and gender history and has written extensively on the role of women in the Easter Rising and Irish women's history and oral history more generally. She was president of the Women's History Association of Ireland from 2011 to 2014 and remains a committee member of the association. Mary has also been involved in a number of public history projects, including the 1916 exhibitions and commemorative quilt project and the 1916 centenary exhibition at the Royal College of Surgeons. And we're very delighted to have her here to chair this debate, which is about women, as everything is.
Yes.
And I think Breed is rejoining us.
Hi.
Hi, Breed. I just read the, I introduced the invited guest to the House, if you don't mind me stealing your job.
Nope, no problem. Really good to know that if I suddenly disappeared in a real debate, someone else could fill my shoes. With that, then, I figure I can explain the other stuff that's relevant to the debate, such as the standing orders. So speeches will be 7 minutes in length for students, and then also 10 minutes for guests, with the first and last minute protected. What is it protected from? It's protected from POIs, or points of information. So what are points of information? They're essentially questions that you can ask of the speaker during their speech. They're really, really useful to do because you get to like engage the speaker and get them to like talk about what you want to talk about. POIs can be made or offered by opposing speakers, but also as well as by audience members. So for audience members to offer POIs, you can use the Q&A function. So you can type your POI, your question, into the Q&A function, and the speaker will see that. Or you can type into the chat POI, and then we, through technical magic, can basically unmute you so you can verbally ask the question to the speaker. So if the speaker accepts that POI, obviously. And yeah, so aside from POIs, there will be a vote at the end of the debate that will be taking place over Zoom, the Zoom poll, which is cool. And then we also have oratory turns. So oratory turns are essentially a way to like grade and rank the speakers on how well you thought they debated. And the reason why we do this is at the end of the year, we actually award the best speakers in our chamber debates, and they can actually win money that way. So it's really important that people fill out these oratory terms, and we really encourage that. They're anonymous and they are really quick to do. They're through Google form that we'll post into the chat. I assume Maggie will do that now. And yeah, with that, I think that is all the standing orders that I have to give. So I will cede the floor back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Auditor. So the question before the House this evening is, this House would free the nipple. And I would now like to call on Olivia Brady to propose the motion to the House.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the Free the Nipple movement, for those of you in attendance who do not know? It started back in 2012 with a woman called Lina Esco, who made a film of herself running topless through the streets of New York, and she was subsequently praised by the likes of Miley, Cyrus and Chrissy Teigen for doing so. Since then, there have only been a handful of protests across the world, and it's an issue that genuinely puzzles me as to why it is an issue in the first place. That no one bats an eyelid when a man goes topless at the beach or just generally to cool off in the hot weather, yet when a woman does it, she's condemned by both men and women for being indecent, a slut, a whore, and every other misogynistic term under the sun designed to humiliate and degrade her. First of all, in this speech, I would like to outline the pure senselessness of making the female chest and specifically the nipples such a taboo. And secondly, I would like to discuss the implications of it. So when I was younger, and if my shirt or top was gaping a little, exposing some of those also offensive mammary glands attached to my body, I would often receive a comment and a sort of a look out of the corner of the person's eye who was talking, as well as a not so subtle gesture to pull the neckline of my top up. And it bothered me at the time, and if it happened to me again today, it would still bother me, because if my top is hanging a little low and my chest is therefore exposed, who is going to be surprised that a 21-year-old woman has breasts? The mere sight of my chest shocks you or offends you, then the problem most definitely lies in you. And my body should not provoke such a hostile reaction for just existing in its natural form. And it's for this reason why I believe taboo around women's chests is utterly senseless. My point there, of course, ignores the blatant double standards when it comes to toplessness. My brother can appear in public without a top on and his nipples exposed and experience no opposition, yet should I do it, the least I will get is dirty looks and misogynistic comments. And at the other end of the scale, I could even get arrested, going by the example of the fate of some Free the Nipple protesters in America. And this attitude of telling women that they have to cover themselves up, to me at least, seems only to the benefit of other people who want not to look at it. All right, so secondly, the implications of making the female chest and nipples a taboo and linking it to indecency and sexuality. So by sexuality, I refer to sexual feelings and actions towards another person, and by indecency, I mean non-conformity within generally accepted standards of behavior, especially in relation to sexual matters. So by calling a woman a slut for appearing topless, we sexualize her regardless of the activity she is performing while being topless. That activity could merely be exercising in her own garden during a heat wave, lying in the sun at the beach, mowing the lawn, and so on. Activities such as these are not inherently sexual, and if we saw a man doing the same things without a top, we would not see it as something provocative. So why do we see that with women? In regard to indecency, there is no logic behind calling female toplessness and the exposing of women's nipples a violation of accepted standards of behavior in relation to sexual matters, because breasts are not sexual organs. There's no logical link between breasts and the performance of sex, so why are we treating them like they are? In New Hampshire, whenever they were trying to make a law making the exposing of a woman's nipples in public illegal, the argument in favor of censoring women's nipples was that they are too distracting for men. And in my opinion, the link between this and the victim blaming attitude surrounding rape is a no-brainer. Telling a woman that if she is topless, that people are allowed to look at her in a sexual way because of that, or touch her or make any kind of advance against her will, tells her that she is the problem, and if anything happens to her, it is her fault. When women's chests are sexualized, we are taught and are saying that that part of the body is exposed, that when that part of the body is exposed, the person exposing them is behaving in a sexual manner and thus asking for it should they be raped. By normalizing this attitude that breasts are inherently sexual, we normalize the treatment of breasts as sexual and the person attached them as the object of that sexuality. If a person is not lying in a bed with you, then you have no right to assume that they want to have sex with you or objectify them in such a way. Instead of blaming women for distracting men who they do not know, we should teach those men and women who think like that it is not the topless woman's choice for you to look at her. She is not controlling where your eyes linger. So that's why we must support the Free the Nipple movement, because if we do not, we are supporting this grossly unnecessary sexualizing of women's bodies and the illogical censoring of women's nipples. And we cannot just stop with the law. And by that, I mean, we cannot stop the fight when female toplessness is protected by law. The Sexual Offences Act of 2017 made illegal the exposure of a sexual nature. That's in Ireland here. So, and I must note that this act does not explicitly include exposure of a woman's nipples in public as an offence, but it does allow a member of the Gardaí to arrest someone without warrant if he or she suspects them of committing an offence under this section. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but as a citizen, this section begs the question that if I were topless in St. Stephen's Green, reading a book, for example, and a passerby called the police on me, could I be accused of potentially committing a sex crime? If we can fully embrace this movement on a mass scale, we can begin to remove the stigma surrounding women's nipples and toplessness in general. If you need any example of where law does not sufficiently protect women in this regard, I direct you happily to the New York Times, who published a video in 2016 of a book club in New York that congregates topless in the park. And this is for both men and women. And in that video, we see a shot of an old man staring at the women in this club who are just reading and discussing their book. And Moments later, we see the police approach them, and it is ludicrous that someone felt the need to accuse these women of having broken the law, since in the state of New York, it is completely legal for a woman to appear topless in public. My point is, thus, making something acceptable in writing has clearly not made it acceptable in practice. What we ought to do now is to make it not only acceptable, but normal in people's heads. And the only way I can see us succeeding with that is through education debates like this. So to conclude, it is ridiculous to me that in 2020 we have double standards of any sort, but especially on such an issue as a woman's torso. By removing the stigma around women's bodies can just become normalized for the way they are. By supporting this side of the house, you support the rightful evolution of women's rights and equality. I beg you to propose.
Third speaker in favor of the motion, I call on Kristof Hoek.
Okay, so this one's going to be quite interesting. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it goes well. So good morning, one and all. Yes, I say morning. Good morning, one and all. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy days to discuss whether nipples should be free to roam unmolested and swaddled not in the clothes of cultural stigma. I'm doing this from my bed because I had a rather nasty accident, and long story short, my ankle is swollen than Shrek's foot. So, you know, bedridden. Right, so obviously the debate on sexual expression and gender repression is one that comes up again and again throughout human history, mainly because, and I think Elias was spot on about this last week when he was talking about this, humans absolutely adore sexuality and things to do with sex. It's something that gets, you know, continuously brought up again and again, from early European statues like the Venus of Willendorf, which I think was what, 30,000 BC, so quite a way away. To the rather extreme Victorian ideals on, you know, chastity that were built on the sturdy and saucy bed of Christianity. So it's safe to say civilization has always found that a rather contentious debate, probably always will, but it is also a debate particularly pertinent to contemporary society, as I will now hope to explain. We all know that unless you are one of those flagrantly exhibitionist continental European types, more on that later if I've got time, I don't know, I wrote about half the speech and then the rest is going to be improv, so we'll see how that goes. It isn't quite so easy for women to expose their breasts openly to the elements as it is for men by law, which is ridiculous. Kind of a bit of a rebuttal here to the previous speaker who was quite good. I think it's less to do with the empowerment brought about it and more to do with the general just equaling of rights. I think it's ridiculous that I can walk around, you know, shirtless on a beach somewhere in Ireland, whereas a woman cannot. I mean, I think whether she wants to do it is entirely her choice, and I understand it's a very, very, very sensitive issue, especially in today's, you know, current cultural climate. But the fact that that option is not there for her to do is particularly worrying. But in any case, going back to why I think, you know, they should be allowed to show breasts and should be encouraged to do so, is, ooh, I seem to have lost my line. Isn't that fun? Anyway, I'll start the next one. Keep in mind, this is a serious debate, so none of that schoolboy snickering. Thank you very much. I think I'm more likely to do that than you lot, but anyway. I would like to welcome a familiar face to my hypothetical stage, one Mr. Body Dysmorphia. He recently starred in the hit play Eating Disorders alongside co-star Crippling Social Anxiety, and is normally to be found lounging around platforms like Instagram or TikTok, low calorie, iced green tea in hand. Now, stars like Mr. Body Dysmorphia, or BD for short, over here, have seen a steady rise to fame with the increasing prevalence of social media, because, and now this may come as a shock to some of you, so, you know, sit down, have some pillows ready in case you faint. People are not body honest on the internet. I know, what the hell. So if you're like me, you probably, and I think there's an awful lot of girls on this particular call, so you probably are. I follow a hell of a lot of like fashion Instagram pages. So my feed is just filled with all these gorgeous people that look fantastic and who put a lot of effort into looking fantastic. Now, specifically for young girls, this can be quite harmful. As we all know, social media can have very, very, very detrimental effects on one's mental health and, you know, body perception. So even if we know that these are not realistic standards of beauty, you know, our lovely ape brains don't quite, you know, coincide reality to actual emotional thought. So what we end up doing is hating our bodies. And I say we, take that with a grain of salt. So
Point of information.
Okay, I've been avoiding this. What's going on there?
Cool. So if the bodies and the breasts that celebrities post on Instagram are still edited, how do we achieve any of these benefits?
Okay, well, this is what I mean to do or to say is that if there's more exposure to breasts and general topless nudity from both the guy side and the girl side, just in like out and about, I feel that people will be able to say, look, yes, I've got imperfections, but so does that person, and that shouldn't necessarily make me less of a human being or less likely to be loved, or I should now go and vomit up my dinner because I've eaten 1 calorie over my due. I don't think that's particularly fair. So was there another one?
Yeah.
Somebody said something. Okay, go on.
So do you think the current Free the Nipple movement is a space for people to overcome said insecurities? Do you think that the current activists within that movement are empowering?
To a certain group of people. I mean, I will sadly have to agree with Daniela when I say that, people of color and various gender identities can definitely feel left out. But I feel even if it empowers a group of people, rather have a group that empowers at least somebody than nobody at all. And also, again, it goes back to just the freedom of being able to do it on the same level as what a guy can do. So I feel that that's quite an important thing. It's just the law should be equal for all manner of peoples, guy or girl or person of color or not or whatever. So I think that's quite a key cornerstone of Western civilization and democracy in general. Now, I did have other things to say. Also, just a funny little thing, because I missed the end of my speech there. But I find the French quite ridiculous because they obviously have the whole, yes, you can go topless on a beach, but then you can't wear, the burqa bikinis on a beach, which I find ridiculously absurd because it's like you are being fined for overdressing rather than underdressing, which is it's just a funny little thing. Okay, I think I'm finished. What, with 20 seconds to go? 10 seconds. Let's go.
Thank you very much, sir, Kristof. And now I call on our fourth speaker, Fadilah Salawu, to oppose the motion.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Fadilah, and I will be speaking to oppose this motion. Across the world, the plight of women is severe and brutal. Women are murdered every day simply for being women, being denied opportunities in the workplace, are harassed, abused, and violated verbally, physically, and emotionally. Women around the world are denied the right to education. Women are subject to genital mutilation and human trafficking. The response to this systemic brutality? Go topless. It cannot be highlighted enough what a flimsy, performative response this is to the very real issues facing women across the world. And I know it is often argued by advocates of the proposing side that the act itself is meant to garner controversy, which can be used to draw attention to the bigger issues. But this is extremely poorly placed because we live in a world when the feminist movement and women's rights activism is trying so hard to be taken seriously, where the patriarchal and misogynist audience still views the female body as inferior and sexual property. In this framework, what is the place for such a movement? There is none. It is unreasonable and naive to expect the intended nobility to be appreciated in advocating bare breasts. One needs to look no further than a public comment section of the topless female activists to prove my point, as Daniela said earlier. Will we see men professing their awakening to the plight of women? Will we see remarks on the causes that the women believe in? Unlikely. We will see lewd, perverse, degrading, violent, and abusive remarks, all relating to the woman's physical appearance. What are free nipples really giving a platform to? And what will these bare breasts achieve? Will women suddenly start receiving equal pay because employers are moved by the sight of topless protest? Or will this convince society to change its attitudes towards the female body, creating a scenario in which a man will think twice before harassing a woman? As well-meaning as this campaign may be, It cannot be disguised under the flag of productive activism nor genuine revolution.
Point of
And can it
information.
even... Yes.
In my speech, I didn't refer to just doing protests to push this movement along. I referred to opening up a discussion to try and educate people. Of course, a protest, walking down the street isn't going to change much. So you have to talk to people. That's what will push this movement forward.
I agree, and I'll actually address this later on in my speech. Thank you. And as Daniela said earlier as well, can this even be seen as body positive? Will the same support be given to plus-size women freeing the nipple? Will the standards be held in place for already over-sexualized and fetishized women of color? And what about observant religious women already fighting societies which demand them to show more skin, as Kristof said? Women whose experiences of womanhood and personal values are not represented by this childish and reductionist argument for female empowerment. May I be so bold as to ask that this campaign be called by its name? White Western feminism, liberalism, and individualism converging to create a narcissistic and exclusive movement that feeds into pre-existing negative notions of the female bodies. Maybe we could call it activist exhibitionism. And I also think that it's a broken application of women's rights activism, because what are we telling young women once again? That in campaigning you should weaponize your femininity? It's as if to say to the patriarchy, I agree, I am no more than my body. Now look at it and give me what I want. That the focus should constantly be on the physical, your body and your perceived sexuality. Again, imagine a young girl who already knows she will not have the same privileges as a topless, thin white woman, maybe because of her relationships with her body and how society sees it, maybe because of her personal boundaries and values, or maybe we don't even need any more maybes. Will this young girl feel empowered? Is this a positive expectation to put on girls' bodies? Such women and such activism do not represent everyone, and the message being sent to young girls by this movement is highly questionable and exclusive. I cannot highlight enough the irony and double standards this is for the feminist movement and women's rights activism. If women insist on competing with men, if women demand to have their voices heard, it cannot be in a way that can be perceived as degrading and feeding into the male narrative. If a man will argue for his rights fully clothed, then so should a woman. It is bizarre how the thought would never cross a man's mind to use his perceived sexuality in order to get what he wants in any public space. And if we argue that women are being ignored in other ways, so we need this attention by freeing the nipple, that in itself shows the gap that we should be trying to fill in more appropriate ways. We should focus on in all the same ways with all the same respect as a man can, and then we can focus on desexualizing the human body. In fact, by then, the job of desexualization will be practically done for us, because when the patriarchy is challenged on its own terms, economically, academically, professionally, then it will begin to view women as agents beyond their bodies. Again, I look at the Free the Nipple movement, and I wonder where there is space for someone like me, someone who does not want to bear skin, someone who places my strength and value in the context of my character and not the physical, someone whose personal activism is through challenging conceptions of what and how a woman should be, and as someone who regrets the commodification, publicization, and degradation of the female body in the name of supposed equality, awareness, and activism. This movement, unfortunately, is simply wrong. It misplaces priorities, it lacks representation and inclusion, and undermines so much of what women's empowerment has been striving to achieve for so long. Instead, bringing the focus back on the female body, that in a world that's not ready to appreciate the female body beyond its sexuality. I believe that this movement is society, and I ask you to oppose the motion. Thank you very much.
Just before we move forward, I completely forgot the last two speakers were actually maidens. So it was their very first time speaking in the HIS chamber. And usually before their speeches, I would have asked if they'd like to waive their maidens' rights. And I completely forgot, and I do apologize. And with that, because assuming they both answered really good POIs and answered them excellently. So with that, I'd like to just give them a massive round of applause for just doing a really, really good job. And yeah, usually this happens before the speech to give them like confidence, but it's happening afterwards. But you didn't need it. You didn't need the extra confidence anyway. But yeah, just apologize greatly for that. But well done. The chair can go on.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to call on our third speaker for the motion, It is, I am afraid I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I'll make an attempt at it. Xiaozhe Sang. If you could propose the motion to the House.
Oh, it's me. I'm Xiaozhe Sang.
Xiaozhe Sang.
Yeah, actually, it's Sang Xiaozhe. And in Chinese, we have the opposite order for family name and last name and first name. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we already know, this house would freeze nipples, and that means the house would give women right to be topless on the street or on the public places. It should not be a privilege to men to be topless, and also women should have this right too. And well, no once women banned before social moral code, and now we are about to guarantee women this right back that should be theirs. Some voices have been present through all the years of the free nipple movement for many years. Conservatives equaled women body nudity with shame, and they believe that the movement is much offensive to the public decency. Many of my questions about this voice will arise. Why is indecent for women to be topless? They might reply that because breasts are women's sexual organs or private parts, and they may ask me back, can we allow men to show up in a movie theater or restaurant with their underwears off? Then I'll go on and ask why women's nipples are sexual part. Why but not a normal part of body. I'll just say that who said that? Who decided that? Is it women themselves or the men in power? Wasn't it the authority who used their thousands of years to the power to create a series of rules to keep and control women? Over time, it's just for many, many years, so such rules become a moral code rules in the minds of many people, both men and women. Well, some tribes in Africa, we know that women can't wear pants. They must wear a skirt when they go out, and the skirt must cover their knees. And also in ancient China, I would like to introduce that to you. An unmarried girl she had her feet touched by a man, and she was to marry him. Regardless what women think, the authority makes decisions for them about their bodies. And when we talk about bodies, we are actually talking about their lives. They said that women's knees are sexual organs, and women's feet were also private, and you could not show your knees or feet. But now, this is the modern time, and the civilization allows human beings to liberate themselves and women to liberate themselves too. Once we liberate the knees of African women and the feet of Chinese women, and now it's the time for our nipples. Just don't care about what the conservative dress code your grandmother may told you. Now we're dressing women can wear. Now we're saying that women can dress shorts or pants or free nipples on the streets just like men. And there's another argument that I would like to say that some people may say that, especially it's a really normal saying in ancient culture circles countries. It's like we are the objection to female nudity is to protect women, because men may can't help but hurt the women when they say she is naked. If a woman dressed very hot and it's late and she's alone, she's at a higher risk of being raped or hurt. However, this theory actually comes from a huge misunderstanding of sexual assault. Sexual assault stems from the criminal's own violent tendencies or hostilities towards women, or even mental illness and some other reasons. There's no doubt that a normal man can control himself and not hurt a naked woman. If you think that the victim was raped or hurt because she behaved improperly, such as her dressing, being drunk, or hung out at night, you are blaming the victim. And this thing is really common in China or in ancient or in Asia culture circle countries. But in my mind, the only reason rape or sexual assault happens is because there are there are criminals in the world. And if men lose their minds just because of they seeing nipples, then I have nothing to do but suggest that all men should go and get an operation for the sake of your sensibility as well as the national security. And the other thing I would like to see that is free nipples are not hurting women. Quite the opposite. Women's health has a lot to do with nipples. In 2010, a survey in Taiwan found that more than 20% of women would delay breast cancer screening because they were afraid of going topless. And it's a little bit different from China or Taiwan to the European countries. The mainstream in here is a little bit more, is much more conservative. I'll say that. And also to the girls, some ill-fitted corset increases the risk of also getting breast cancer. So just in short, yes, please.
I appreciate your point on going topless for the purpose of medical screenings, but do you think that freeing the nipple publicly would have advantages in the same way? Is it worth it?
Oh yes, I can understand your idea, but I would like to say that here is a saying in China. We have this famous Chinese writer whose name is Lu Xun, and Lu Xun once said, if you want to open a window of a room, and people will say that, oh no, don't do that. We have lights. We don't need a window. But if you said, I want some more light, and then I'll just break the roof, and just break the roof, and people will say, no, don't break the roof. We can open a window. Do you understand me? It's like if we don't go very extreme, we go very far, then they may fail because there's always some people will see there's something you have to see things critically. There's some good things and bad things, but if you really want to get your right, if you really want to make an improvement, you have to sometimes you must. There's no choice but go a little bit extreme. I'll say that. And okay, then I'll continue with my arguments. And as I said, that the women's health has a lot of to do with nipples, and if we can see that if women even could choose to cover their tops for beautiful, for aesthetic or warmth reasons, but never shame. And for the last part, I want to say that it's about male gaze. I don't want to talk about terms, actually this terms is from a movie industry like Hollywood cinemas. Actually is a British feminist film theorist called Laura Mulvey. She published an essay and talked about the theory of male gaze. It's saying that women or female character in film is a spectacle subject to the shared gaze of person behind the camera and male characters and all the audience. And this gaze is a heterosexual male gaze. Since then, the male gaze is a complete concept that has been used in feminist analysis ever since. And the free nipple movement is a female resistance to the male gaze. And I would like to explain why we use women's body as a weapon or something, or as an approach to the public movements or politics. And I would like to say that there's some relationship between body nudity and political movements, from feminists resisting gender violence by marching nude to, and there's another example I want to say, that sometimes some like environmentalist or some other protest will also engage in nude riding or some other nude things to use their bodies, right things or drawing pictures on their body, the demand have no similarities, but people believed that better outcomes would be achieved by taking off their clothes and exposing their bodies. And the body nudity has become a political discourse, and how to say that, rhetoric drive. Even if the voice fades, the body is still vocalizing. Yes, and I think there's a little bit. I still have a couple seconds. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And now I'd like to call on our final speaker to oppose the motion, Medb Hurley.
Hi, can you hear me? Cool. So I'm going to talk about history, and I think the previous speakers in the opposition have made a very good case. But I'm going to go back to kind of basics and talk about the harms of general sexualization of women, and kind of then fit it into an individual perspective of this motion. So ladies and gentlemen, generations of male commentators and academics have rewritten the primitive woman as no more than a sexual vehicle. For Robert Harvey, menstruation was a consequence of a woman being in heat, a glorious time when she can provide fun for all and for herself a maximum of male attention. Oh boy, this theory of women's early sexual evolution also accounts for the arrangement of a modern woman's body. Did you know? When Man the Hunter began to walk upright, as Desmond Morris explained so vividly, the once adequately appealing female buttocks was no longer in eyesight, so women, to oblige man's newfound desire for frontal sex, developed and increased their breast size. This had nothing to do with the increasing size of a human baby, of course. These utterly ridiculous theories of female evolution published in the 20th century came from men who had the privilege of writing history that both paints the man as an inherently violent and destructive lone wolf, which is the figment of mythology, and belittles and dismisses women as objects of sexual pleasure. And it is these very modes of thinking that seep through generations like ink through tissue paper, reducing insides perhaps by the last piece, but nonetheless still remarkably intact. This mentality is the root of why the female nipple and breast is still censored and enslaved today, not the laws prohibiting female nudity. They are more a reflection of this deep-rooted misogyny. So it is much harder to unravel than the prop has understood so far. In the Stone, Iron, and Bronze Age, a woman's role in society was not to simply gather food while men, as the courageous, dashing, heroic creatures they are, hunted, despite the fact that our education systems reduced their roles to this binary opposition of man and woman. In fact, women were so much more. Physically, they cooked, weaved clothes, and crafted weapons from animal skin, built shelters, gave birth to children, fashioned jewelry, and invented medicines. Spiritually, women were viewed as emblems of heaven, a divine personification of the weather and earth gods, or high priestesses who could communicate with gods due to their shared ability, creating new life. Breasts were a symbol of this power. They sustained new life, a function far removed from sex as a concept tied to love and desire. It is my estimation that men feared this power rather than hated it, just as they do today, and I'm afraid of their fear. It drove them to begin the generations-long pursuit of shrouding the female body in a metaphorical and literal cover of shame. This deep-rooted misogyny filtered into every iteration of hierarchy in society. Royalty, the elite, wore sophisticated clothing that covered the woman from head to toe and dictated her physical frame with inventions like the corsets and panniers, etc. Sophisticated dress is linked to obscuring the natural nude body and is disassociating oneself from savages who run around naked. Dress codes, a product of elitism and sexism and racism and every fucking bad ism you can imagine, have endured somehow into the modern progressive world. In the corporate sectors, in college debating societies, women must wear structured clothing like a suit that not only covers her skin, creates a boxy masculine frame that hides the biological curves unique to women. So what are we being told by all of this over and over again? The female body is unprofessional and inappropriate because it is inherently sexual. This comes from our very clothing and is enforced and embedded in the attitude of society, and it implicates so much more on a global scale than you think. Abortion referendums, trials of rapists and sexual assault cases, the underpaying of working women, school dress codes, everything. And yes, this concept is only restrictions of female nudity in the modern world, the rules laid out by every social media platform banning images that contain a female nipple. But changing those laws in Olivia's interpretation of the motion doesn't reverse this internalized and perpetuated misogyny. It's just too deep at this point. Because for me, it's not the blatant double standards that result from these rules or the hypocrisy of it all. I would argue it's not just mildly annoying or insulting, but you're like, I guess I'll just post my nudes to OnlyFans. It's actually deeply harmful because of the like deep, like kind of psychological nature of the whole thing, and so difficult to tackle. As we can see from our history, the female breast is not sexual in and of any association as a protected of an innocent body part, but everyone who engages with this online world is told that the female nipple is sexual and inappropriate and therefore must be censored, whereas in reality the nipple is censored, something that's perceived and as sexual and inappropriate. And these restrictions strengthen the completion of women and sex. And this leads to all kinds of harms on an individual level, which is the level I'm interested in. Girl grows up, girl is told by school to cover shoulders, knees, breasts, collarbones, skin, her body parts distract the boys. Girl hears and begins to see herself as a sexual object. Girl endures male-centric sexual education, ignorant therefore of how to masturbate, orgasm, draw pleasure from sex rather than give it. Girl must not post images of her body on the internet, yet girl must be conventionally attractive and seek male attention using systems built by the patriarchy, makeup, hair, photos, but not too much. She must not enjoy these things and claim them as her own. She must not overdo it because then she's a slut, a whore, asking for it. It's fucking exhausting, and it's even more exhausting for someone who's not as privileged as I am, trying to adhere to these rules in society as a teenage girl and as a woman when you get into adult life. It leads to all kinds of bigger things I mentioned earlier on, like sexual harassment, something endured by every woman I know. And let's say that they aren't that unlucky. This culture of censorship still creates women who have very disappointing and often very extremely traumatizing first sexual experiences because they aren't comfortable in their own bodies. They are woefully misinformed about the nature of sex, and they are generally submissive from being taught that a man's desire, dominance, and climax dictates the parameters of sex. And on the flip side of the coin, you create young men who view the female breast as something mysterious and taboo, instead of being exposed to real women, a diverse collection of bodies of different races. But driven by a natural curiosity and probably like puberty, they're drawn to the only place they can see a woman's breast, pornography, most often Pornhub. So thanks to the lack of diversity on Pornhub, the first time a young man probably sees a naked woman, she fits an ideal archetype: white, skinny, unscarred, hairless, eager to pleasure in any way, a detrimental fantasy. And they see the fully naked female breast revealed in a sexual environment. Once again, female equates sex. So certainly, the female nipple is enslaved as a perpetually sexual and ruinous thing. Certainly the nipple is censored, and that is bad. And absolutely, I want to cut out the section of my brain that educated itself on the extent to which the female body is reduced to its parts by misogynistic modes of thinking and the feeling of being an object of that gaze. And I wish I could erase every experience I've ever had of sexual harassment from my memory, as I'm sure every woman would like to, because it would be easier to be blissfully ignorant. But should I or you as an individual participate in the Free the Nipple movement or campaign by exposing my naked body on the internet or in person? Personally, no. Women will not have bodily autonomy until that unconscious bias against female bodies don't fit that an archetype is reversed in the human psyche. So I will not subject myself to the scrutiny and shame because my identity will be eroded away. I cannot, as an individual, reverse generations of patriarchal oppression through thought processes that have led to the restrictions of female nudity, as much as I wish I could, because I'm not Cara Delevingne or Miley Cyrus, and I don't have the kind of reputation or power that means I could endure it, that I could protect backlash. Or don't have a platform, you probably can't either. So instead of playing their game and losing no matter how hard we fight, I'm going to do an Eliza Hamilton on it and remove myself from the narrative. Perhaps in a few generations, my grandchildren will be able to post pictures of themselves on the internet and have it be perceived as like a deep instead of a clear indication to a blind world that they're just another slut. But for now, I want no part in this. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all our speakers. I will now put the question to the House on the motion, this House would free the nipple. All those in favour, please vote aye. All those against, please vote nay.
We can't vote, I see that.
Yeah, sorry, panelists can't vote. So we'll use the traditional method of just screaming. That's how we normally do it in chamber.
So all those in favor, and then we all just scream.
Yell. Another few seconds for anyone who hasn't voted yet in the audience.
Also, if you have voted, feel free to fill in the oratory return. I posted the link in the group, in the Zoom chat. Also, after the debate, we'll be heading to Discord as well. The Discord, and that link is also in the chat.
Okay, I think everyone who is going to vote has voted. So I'll end the polling. So back to the chair.
Okay, the motion is defeated. So thank you all very much. The House would not free the nipple. And now, as is my right as the chair, I will take a few minutes of your time to address this particular matter, because it is one that is of interest to me. And I'm very interested in feminism, in hacktivism and hashtag activism, hashtag free the nipple, hashtag slut shaming, hashtag time's up, hashtag all those hacktivism that is happening, and also the commodification and the celebritization of feminism that is happening today. And I see this free the nipple as part of that. And as Ariel Levy said, what appears to be liberating rebellion is actually a stifling conformity. Because, of course, freeing the nipple doesn't include all nipples. There are many nipples that the society refuses to accept and would refuse to free. Those nipples that don't conform to the heteronormative, white, middle-class, skinny, embodied, beautiful, normative performance of femininity. So this hacktivism is often about a very Western ideology of what we mean by liberation, a very white ideology about what we mean by liberation for women, and a very middle-class ideology of what we mean by women. Because, of course, freeing your nipples means that you have clothing to cover yourself, that you're not going around in rags, that you're not freezing, that you are not looking for things to cover yourself with. So the commodification of feminism, to me, is part of the subject we're debating here. I would say if you're going to free the nipple, do it in a radical way. Look at how the radical feminist group Femin use their body and use toplessness use their body as a platform to make radical feminist activism, grassroots activism, have real impact. So they go into cathedrals topless in order to bring up the absolute oppression of women through religion and through faith-based ideologies through the centuries, that women are stuck in that binary in Christianity, for example, of virgin and whore. So they use the female body with their slogans written across their naked breasts to do that. And they are women of all shapes and sizes. They use their naked bodies to campaign against homophobia and transphobia and lesbophobia. So my right as a white Western woman to walk down the street with my top off, if I wish to, and I don't think anyone would call the Gardaí. They may call the men or women in white coats, but they won't call the Gardaí. I would get catcalled or sneered at, but I do have a right to do that if I so wish to do it. I also think we have to remember that the embodied female body is something that is always looked on askance, be it the normative representation of feminine beauty or anything that is outside of that. So hashtagism, like free the nipple, is not intersectional. It's not intersectional feminism. And if your feminism isn't intersectional, it isn't feminism, according to me and many other feminists of my generation. So I would agree on the motion that free the nipple, fun, something to do, but it's certainly not going to move forward equality for women in any real way. It's the same type of feminism as lean-in feminism, very liberal Western idea of feminism. When Sheryl Sandberg is talking about lean-in feminism and publishing books and making millions out of those books to talk about how we can empower women, she's talking about women who already have a privilege in society, who are educated, who can access the platform from which they lean in to organizations, or they lean into good jobs, or they lean into their voices being heard on public platforms. The same with something like Free the Nipple. We don't take into account Black bodies, disabled bodies, working class bodies, trans bodies. We talk about that normative Western white feminism. And for me, that feminism has had its day and it needs to be gone. So the next time, I hope, where we talk about nipples, we talk about breast campaigns, breastfeeding campaigns, breast check campaigns. Use the nipple in that way. See the nipple as free so that a woman can walk into whenever we can again, walk into a cafe or a restaurant and whip out her breast to feed a child, and not be put into a toilet where she's told there are facilities to feed your child. Who wants to feed their child in a toilet? So use the breast to campaign for rights of breastfeeding people. Use it to do awareness campaigns on breast cancer. You just have to look at any film to see nipples all over the place. What about freeing the penis in terms of the gaze, the cinematic gaze? You know, it's not just breasts that are confined, so are penises. So if we want to free anything, free the body, the entire body, desexualize the body in many ways. So I would agree with the defeat of this motion tonight, and I'm very happy to add my voice to that. Thank you. I should now like to call upon the auditor to announce the Society's forthcoming events.
Thank you, and thank you for an amazing chair's address. I think it was really lovely to hear your take on it. And thank you to all the speakers who spoke this evening. Really excellent debate. So on to our upcoming events. I'm very excited to essentially announce that next week we will be debating "This House Believes That Sustainable Shopping is a Lie," and we're going to be doing that in collaboration with UCD. There we go, UCD World, and the LMH, our sister society in UCD. It's going to be a charity colors debate. So we are raising money for the Helen Keller International Foundation. And if anyone's interested in the motion, sustainable shopping, that sort of thing, please get in contact with Maggie Larson. We also have sign-up forms on our website, tcdhis.com/termcard, and the forms are all there. It will be a really exciting event, and obviously because it's with UCD, there's that rivalry there, and it's for charity, so you should definitely come. What else does the HIS do? We are currently running Maidens. Maidens is a competition open to anyone new to university debating, so that includes freshers, but that also includes a postgrad who's never debated before. So we had our first round this week, but you still can sign up. We have 5 rounds over 5 weeks. And all you have to do is do 3 rounds in order to break. Break in debating terminology just means to get into the, say, quarterfinals. And yeah, really exciting if you want to meet new people and develop your public speaking skills and also your argument skills. I definitely recommend joining up for Maidens. Here is the link. Yeah, I just posted the link into the chat for signups. And if you're curious, you feel free to talk to Sean, our RecSec, or any of his pros, or just anyone on the committee. Maidens is really fun and you should definitely do it. What else? We have novice training. So if you're a bit intimidated by just jumping into a debating competition straight off, feel free to come to our novice debate training. There we go. The training is open to literally anyone who hasn't debated before. We teach you just, argumentative skills from the ground up, how to structure your speech, how to form like logical arguments. And yeah, we have that every Monday over Zoom at 6:30. And then finally, if you're interested in learning what debate's like and also learning how to judge. Judging is actually a really important part of debating. Competitive debating, there's basically two halves, the people who speak, but also the people who judge. And judging is in itself really useful because you learn how to like listen and you learn how to pick up the important parts and figure out like which argument is actually the more valuable in terms of logic. And if you're interested in doing that, I would 100% recommend judging our Leinster Schools competition. So Leinster Schools is a competition we run for basically 4th, 5th, and 6th years. Throughout schools in Leinster, it's done over Zoom, and we need judges for that. So if you're curious in picking up some judging skills, again, it could really help your own like debating skills and your own argument skills. Definitely sign up to do that. Also, it's just nice to give back, to engage with kids and give feedback and that sort of thing. It's really, really wonderful. And yeah, if you're interested in doing that, I would 100% recommend talking to Laura Egan. She's our librarian. Yeah, she's waving just down there. She's lovely. You should talk to her about it. She would love you to judge. And yeah, with that, I think all I have to say is that we'll be having kind of post-debate chats on our Discord server. So I think I posted the link in the chat. Hope to see you there. And yeah, I think that's it. Whew. I'll pass back to the chair.
Yes, we've done the society's events. I call now on this house to be adjourned.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers for an incredible debate, and especially to our wonderful chair for one of the best chair's addresses I've heard in so long. Really made me miss the debating table because normally when you agree with people in a chamber, you like just hit the table really hard as a sign of approval. So I wish I could do that today, but alas. But anyway, also thanks everyone for coming and thanks for filling out the oratory turns. I'll see you all on the Discord. I'll give you a minute also to click on that link because every other debate, people have been like, the event ended too quickly and I couldn't click on the link. So.
Okay, I won't be able to join you, but thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Really good speeches. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You too.
Okay, if everyone has got that Discord link, then I will